I've worked overnight building maintenance for 19 years. Most emergency calls are simple: burst pipes, broken HVAC units, or people trapped in elevators. You answer the call, get them out, and head to the next job. After a while, nothing surprises you. But one night, dispatch sent me to a downtown office building I'd never seen before. That should have been impossible. I knew every property on our route. Then the man trapped inside the elevator said something over the emergency intercom that made me stop cold. "Please, hurry, before the doors open by themselves." By 2 in the morning, the city belongs to people like me. Truck drivers, nurses, police officers, janitors, building maintenance crews. Everyone else is asleep, while we're the ones keeping everything running. I'd worked overnight maintenance for 19 years, long enough to know every property our company serviced. My van carried tools for plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and emergency lockouts. We weren't elevator mechanics, but after midnight we handled every elevator rescue until a specialist could arrive. Most calls were routine: burst pipes, broken air conditioners, fire alarm resets, people trapped in elevators. I'd answer the emergency intercom, ask if anyone was hurt, figure out what floor they were near, then get the doors open and send them on their way. After hundreds of calls, nothing about the job surprised me anymore. That Tuesday started like every other shift. Just after midnight, I reset a fire alarm at an apartment building after someone burned popcorn. Around 1 o'clock, I unclogged a drain in a hotel basement. An hour later, I replaced a failed HVAC relay on the roof of a grocery store. By 2:15 a.m., I was sitting behind a 24-hour diner finishing paperwork with a lukewarm cup of coffee, hoping the rest of the night stayed quiet. My radio crackled. "Tom," I grabbed the handset. "Go ahead. We've got an elevator entrapment." I sighed, started the van, and reached for my coffee. "What's the address?" There was a pause, long enough that I checked the radio. Finally, the dispatcher answered. 163 West Ash. I frowned. "Can you repeat that?" 163 West Ash. That couldn't be right. I'd been covering this route for nearly 2 decades. West Ash had an old bank, the courthouse annex, and a parking garage. There wasn't an office tower there. "You sure that's the right address?" Another pause. Then she answered in an oddly flat voice. "Passenger trapped between floors." She hadn't answered my question. She'd simply repeated the work order. I entered the address into my GPS. The route appeared immediately, 7 minutes away. The destination marker sat exactly where I remembered, an empty lot. I shook my head. Guess they built a skyscraper overnight. Rain began falling as I pulled away from the diner. The streets were almost empty. Traffic lights changed for cars that weren't there. The only sound inside the van was the wipers and the occasional burst of static from the radio. 7 minutes later, I turned onto West Ash. The bank was still there. The courthouse was still there. The parking garage was still there, and standing between them was a 20-story office building. Every window glowed. Rain shimmered across polished black stone. Above the revolving doors hung bronze letters I'd never seen before. Wexler Building. I stopped the van in the middle of the street. In 19 years, I'd never seen that building before. The GPS guided me through streets I'd driven hundreds of times. Nothing looked different. Same intersections, same traffic lights, same old brick buildings. Yet the route insisted I was heading somewhere I'd never been. Rain drummed steadily against the windshield as I turned onto West Ash. The bank stood exactly where I remembered. The courthouse annex hadn't changed. The parking garage was still there. Then my headlights swept across a building that absolutely did not belong. 20 stories of polished black stone climbed into the night. Every office window glowed. The revolving doors reflected the rain like the place had been open for business all evening. Bronze letters above the entrance read, Wexler Building. I pulled to the curb and just stared. If someone had built a tower this size, I'd have serviced it dozens of times by now. Instead, it felt like I was seeing it for the first time. The parking lot was empty. No employee vehicles, no security patrol, no delivery trucks. Nothing. Only my maintenance van. I grabbed my tool bag and stepped into the rain. The lobby doors slid open before I reached them. Inside, everything was spotless. Marble floors, dark wood walls, fresh flowers sat on the reception desk. A grandfather clock ticked softly somewhere in the distance. There should have been a night security guard, or at least a cleaning crew. Instead, the entire lobby sat empty. The silence felt wrong. Not quiet, muted, as if the building itself swallowed every sound. Then the emergency intercom crackled overhead. "Hello?" The voice was weak, male, older. I looked toward the bank of elevators. One display glowed red, Car 3, out of service. I stepped to the elevator doors and pressed the intercom button. "Building maintenance." Several seconds passed, then the man answered. "Oh, thank God. I'm here to get you out." His breathing sounded shaky. "I don't think you have much time." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "The doors." He stopped speaking. "They keep trying to open." I glanced at the closed stainless steel doors in front of me. They hadn't moved. "I don't understand." "They aren't opening where you are." His voice dropped almost to a whisper. "They're opening here." A chill crept up my spine. "Sir, what floor are you near?" Silence. Then, "I don't know anymore." I looked at the floor indicator above the elevator. The numbers weren't moving, no arrows, just a single illuminated digit. 13. I blinked. That couldn't be right. Every building I'd ever worked skipped the 13th floor. The panel should have read 12 or 14, never 13. Thinking it had to be a display malfunction, I checked the directory mounted beside the elevators. It listed floors 1 through 12, then 14 through 20. No 13. I looked back up. The display still glowed. The intercom hissed again. His voice was barely audible now. "You can see it, can't you?" Before I could answer, every light in the lobby flickered once. The elevator gave a soft metallic thud from somewhere deep inside the shaft. Then came 3 slow knocks from behind the closed doors. Knock, knock, knock. I froze. The man whispered one last sentence. "Please, don't let them open." Then the intercom went dead. For several seconds, I couldn't take my eyes off that glowing number. 13. The directory beside the elevators skipped straight from 12 to 14. The display above the doors insisted the elevator was on 13. One of them had to be wrong. I pulled the master service key from my pocket and unlocked the maintenance corridor behind the lobby. The hallway beyond was narrow, lined with gray concrete walls and humming electrical panels. At the far end sat the elevator machine room. The heavy steel door wasn't locked. That surprised me. Building engineers almost always kept these rooms secured. Inside, the steady hum of machinery filled the air. I switched on my flashlight. The equipment stopped me in my tracks. Nothing looked modern. The drive motors were enormous cast-iron machines covered in faded manufacturer's plates. The relay cabinets were packed with rows of clicking mechanical switches instead of circuit boards. Copper wiring disappeared into thick steel conduit polished smooth with age. It looked less like a 21st century elevator system and more like something from the 1950s. Yet everything was running perfectly. The motors turned, the cables moved, oil gauges showed normal pressure. It was impossible. I stepped over to the control cabinet. A small position indicator glowed behind scratched glass. Car 3, level 13. I frowned. Another 13. I checked the emergency service log hanging beside the cabinet. The newest entry was written in faded blue ink. October 14th, 1994. No entries after that, not one, nearly 30 years without a single inspection. That alone should have been impossible. The radio on my belt crackled. "Tom?" I grabbed it immediately. "Yeah, go ahead." Only static answered. Then, "Don't go." The voice wasn't dispatch. It was the same older man from the elevator. I looked down at the radio. The emergency intercom couldn't transmit through my company frequency, yet his voice had come through perfectly. "Please." The transmission dissolved into harsh static. At that exact moment, every relay inside the machine room snapped at once. Clack! The motors fell silent. The room became unnaturally still. Then, from somewhere below my feet, 3 slow knocks echoed up the elevator shaft. Knock, knock, knock. I hurried back into the hallway and found the maintenance access door leading to the shaft. A narrow inspection window had been built into the steel. I shined my flashlight through the glass. The elevator car hung several floors below, completely motionless. Its roof sat level with a landing marked by a large painted number. 13. The beam drifted across the top of the car. There was no movement, no trapped passenger, no sign of anyone. Then the flashlight reached the opposite wall. Someone was standing there. An older man, gray hair, blue work shirt, perfectly still. He wasn't inside the elevator. He was standing on the narrow landing beside it, 40 feet below me. He slowly raised his head. Even from that distance, I could tell he was looking directly at me. The emergency phone mounted beside him rang. He didn't answer it. Instead, he slowly lifted one shaking hand and pointed upward, toward me. Then every light in the shaft went out at once. Darkness swallowed everything below. A second later, the emergency phone in the lobby began ringing. The emergency phone kept ringing. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound echoed through the empty lobby until it felt like it was coming from every direction. I hurried back through the corridor and picked up the receiver mounted beside car 3. "Maintenance." For a moment, there was only breathing. Then the old man spoke. "You looked through the window." It wasn't a question. "You saw me." I swallowed. "Who are you?" A long silence followed. Finally, he answered. "I used to answer these calls." The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. "What does that mean?" "I worked nights." His breathing grew heavier. "Same company." I looked down at the patch sewn onto my jacket, the company logo, the one I'd worn for almost 20 years. "How long have you been trapped?" "I don't know anymore." Another pause. It stopped keeping time. Before I could ask another question, every elevator in the lobby chimed. All 3 floor indicators lit at once. 1, 7, 15, 20. The numbers began racing. Up, down, up again. Far faster than any elevator could travel. Yet I couldn't hear a single motor. The displays finally froze. Every one of them read the same thing. The lights flickered. A deep metallic groan rolled through the building. The emergency phone crackled again. "They know you're here." "Who?" "They always send someone." The line filled with static. Then another voice broke through. It sounded exactly like dispatch. "Tom?" I reached for my radio. "Go ahead. We've confirmed the passenger is in car 3. "I know." "Open the doors." Something about her voice felt wrong. Perfectly calm, perfectly flat. I pressed the transmit button. "Dispatch, what's the name of this building?" No answer. Instead, she repeated herself. "Open the doors!" The same words, the same tone, like a recording. My radio clicked off by itself. The elevator directly in front of me shuddered. The doors trembled, then began sliding apart, only an inch, just enough to reveal darkness inside. No lights, no walls, just blackness. A cold draft rolled out of the opening. It smelled old, like damp concrete sealed away for decades. The old man's voice burst through the emergency phone. "Don't let it see you." The doors continued opening, 2 inches, 3, 4. I grabbed the edge and slammed my shoulder against the stainless steel. The motor kept pushing, slowly, relentlessly. The gap widened anyway. My flashlight slipped from my hand and rolled across the marble floor. Its beam landed perfectly inside the opening. For the briefest second, the light illuminated someone standing inside the elevator. He wore dark blue maintenance coveralls. The tool bag hung from one shoulder. His face remained hidden in shadow, but the company patch on his chest caught the light. It was identical to mine. Then the flashlight flickered. When it came back, the figure had moved. Now it stood only inches behind the opening, waiting for the doors to finish opening. I threw my weight against the doors. The motor didn't slow. Metal groaned beneath my shoulder as the opening widened another inch. Then the emergency phone screamed, not rang, screamed. A burst of static exploded through the lobby so loudly I stumbled backward. The doors stopped moving. The silence that followed felt even worse. My radio crackled. "Tom!" It was dispatch, her normal voice. "Told you I'd lost you for a minute. Is everything all right?" I looked at the elevator. The gap was gone. The doors were completely shut. The floor display now read 12. I stared at it. "Tom?" I finally answered. "Can you verify the address?" Paper shuffled on the other end. "What address?" "The elevator call." Another pause. "We don't have an elevator call." My stomach dropped. "You dispatched me 7 minutes ago." "No, Tom." Her voice sounded genuinely confused. "Your last work order was the grocery store." I slowly turned toward the lobby entrance. Outside, there was no rain. Morning light had begun creeping over the skyline. I hurried through the revolving doors. My van sat exactly where I'd parked it. The dashboard clock read 6:42 a.m. More than 4 hours had vanished. I drove straight back to the shop. The overnight supervisor looked up as I walked in. "You look awful." I asked him one question. "Have we ever serviced a place called the Wexler Building?" He frowned. "No." "What about 163 West Ash?" He opened the property database. Nothing. No address, no building, no service history. He turned the monitor toward me. "There's a municipal parking lot there." I didn't argue. I simply nodded and went home. 3 days later, I couldn't stop thinking about it, so I drove back. The parking lot was exactly where I remembered. No tower, no revolving doors, nothing but cracked asphalt and faded parking lines. I was halfway back to my van when something caught my eye. Bolted to an old utility pole at the edge of the lot was a weathered brass plaque. Most people would have walked right past it. I brushed away years of dirt. Stamped into the metal were 5 words. Wexler Building Elevator Inspected, October 1994. Below that, another line, Car 3. And beneath it, one name, Thomas Mercer. My own. The plaque looked decades old, older than the company itself. My hands started shaking. I backed away until I reached the van. That was 6 months ago. I still work nights. I still answer emergency calls. But every time dispatch says the words, "Passenger trapped in an elevator," I ask for the address first. Because sometimes there's a pause before they answer. And every now and then, for just a second, I hear an older man whisper over the radio, "Please, don't send yourself." Some people are afraid of getting stuck in an elevator. After hearing this story, maybe the real fear isn't getting trapped inside. Maybe it's answering the call to let someone else out. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to Campfire Horror Stories. New original horror stories are released every week, and you won't want to miss the next one, Waiting in the Darkness. And before you go, let me know down in the comments, if you were the maintenance worker and that dispatcher gave you the address, would you have gone inside the Wexler building? Sleep well. And if the emergency phone ever starts ringing after the doors are already closed, don't answer it.